Obviously, your running backs, your tight ends, your quarterbacks, of course, and then your receivers' ability to get open. So, it's a credit to them and the personnel that we have and what they're doing. But I think, we also make a pretty concerted effort to make sure, and we put an emphasis on that we don't play bad football. And having negative plays like a sack is an example of bad football. And so, how we call the plays, how quick we get the ball out, the kind of passes that we call, we want to make sure that we're, for lack of a better term, mitigating risk and not giving up a bunch of sacks and quarterback pressures. So to answer your question pointedly, it would be, it's the kids and what they're capable of doing.
Question for both of you guys. Talk about Arkansas. Talk about the matchup. Who do they remind you of out of the Big 12, and how does playing in a tough conference like the Big 12 get you ready for postseason play?
Go ahead.
Well, I would tell you just from a personnel standpoint and a scheme standpoint on the defense side of the ball, they have some multiplicity like a lot of the teams in the league that we play and do. Personnel-wise, their front four, their defensive line, I think they got some really good depth, and that would rival, the top tier of our league as well. Without getting into specific teams, because I actually have asked that question of our offensive staff and said, who do they remind us of? And the answer was 6 different teams, at different times. Certainly their depth and the experience that they have at the D line is something that we're prepared for and that we're ready to go. And I know that this probably be a question. They've had some flux with their roster and personnel, but I know that they'll have some guys that are ready to play. When we're out there a couple days.
Yeah, offensively, they're not totally dissimilar to most teams that we play, or I can't say they're exactly like anybody either. So, with the running quarterback, that's TCU's got a little bit of that, and just some of the size and just some of the things they try to do might be similar to some of Iowa State or Baylor, some of those teams. So, formationally and things like that, they're pretty common to most teams, but I don't know that we've probably faced the combination of a big quarterback that can run like this guy, and also then a really good running back at the same time. So we know we've got a work cut out for us, and obviously they're big up front and powerful up front, and no matter who's there. So that's always going to be a challenge no matter what.
Coach, if you look back to last year's Outback Bowl, they were down some of their key receivers and really leaned on the run game. And in this game, they've lost a lot of receivers. Are you anticipating a little more run heavy? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Most teams would try to run the ball on us a fair amount. So I'm assuming, like I said, no matter what they've lost in the receiving core and tight end and things like that, they still have the quarterback and they still have all those running backs. And I thought that's probably throughout the year watching them, that combination was as good as anything that they did. Not that they can throw the ball. There's just a lot. I'm sure they're going to try to run the ball on us, but who knows? It's always an opportunity for maybe some receiver that hasn't really got to play a lot this year. Well, it's his coming out party, so I'm sure the guys that are going to play are good players, and they'll be motivated to play well.
Follow-up question for you guys. Obviously, a great season for Kansas football, hosted College Game Day, get to a bowl game. Talk about the culture around this program, and especially playing in the bowl game like the Autos and Liberty Bowl. How does that help you guys build for the future of Kansas football?
Well, the first thing that it allows us to do is extra practices. In the compounding effect that has on your program, it's hard to measure, honestly, right? And when you think that it's been about 12 years plus since this program's been able to be rewarded by those compounding effects of playing extra game or bowl, extra game and getting extra practices, and all their opponents have, the gap's just getting a lot wider, or it has. And so it starts with the ability to practice. And I know that sounds really simplistic, but it is, right? So we have every one of our players got the chance to get an extra, I don't even know how many practices we've had since, 10 to 12 or 13 or whatever it's been, okay? But you spoke to culturally about, what has changed, but I think, when you come in and you try to turn a program, you come in, you say certain things, and you try the best that you can as a coach to point out specific, tangible examples for the players to relate to and understand. but it never sinks in until they get to experience the success themselves. And so for us to experience a little bit of that, and it's just a taste of it, you know what I mean, right? This would be the bare minimum for us, and I hope it is moving forward, right? It's a small step. But for them to actually get to personally experience it, in the enjoyment of it, right, and then to have the opportunities and they can see themselves grow, I think culturally that'll pay off significantly in the next few months especially.
Yeah, I would just agree with what Andy said, just in terms of the extra practice time, which is a huge benefit. I think in our previous stops over the last several years, when you've been able to do that, it's a huge benefit going forward. But yeah, I think also for particularly, we've asked a lot of guys to buy in and to doing a lot of things in a different way than maybe had been done before, and this is a way again they can see, hey, I think our team has bought in very well over the last 18 months, and here's a little bit, like Coach said, a little bit of a taste of what can happen when enough guys do, and so I think we've got a good recipe for success. And I just think culturally it just helps going forward because guys know what works, and I think we can keep building off of that as we go forward. Yep, I'm anticipating him playing. So he's been it's a long season. He played a lot of snaps, and guys get banged up here or there, but he's out there today running around, and I'm anticipating him playing for sure.
Coach, Arkansas' 1-2 punch has been the quarterback Jefferson and then their running back number 5, Sanders. Can you maybe speak to their strengths, what you see out of them?
Yeah, their strengths is, I think their strength, big, strong. The Jefferson, the quarterback, he's been sacked a lot, but he's probably got out of as many sacks as he's been attempted sacks. So he's a hard guy to bring down. I think when he's it's designed run plays and things like that for him. So. We've certainly got to try to control the line of scrimmage, and when we've got a chance to get guys on the ground, we better get them on the ground, and that's been easier said than done from what I can see. And I think the running back's much the same. He's a good-sized guy. He runs well. He's got good make you miss ability, and he runs through a lot of tackles. So. The games that we've played really well, we've controlled the line of scrimmage, played physical up front, and tackled well. The games that haven't always gone our way, we struggle in that area. So I'm trying to, we're trying to impress on our players that, hey, that's where we need to start everything is we need to control the line of scrimmage. We need to play physically up front, and when we got a chance to tackle guys, we need to get them on the ground. So they're really good players, and it certainly is a high concern. I don't know if you took our on the year, probably 20% maybe. Some games more, some games less. I think depends on the game, the situation, the team, the down and distance situation sometimes, and we're certainly not afraid of mixing it up and doing things, but it's not. I wouldn't say that it's pressure every down. That's just not probably who we are as much, but. I think there's certainly times and situations where we do a lot. So I would like to think it's at times of our own choosing and for our own purposes rather than reactionary to anything an offense might be, forcing you to do. So.
Coach, the teams that have wanted to pass on Arkansas have pretty much succeeded. I know you've been more of a run-heavy team, but is the temptation there to try their corners?
Well, the plan is always balance. Right, we'll go into every game with balance, true balance. Try to be 50-50, the best that you can, and sometimes statistics can get skewed a little bit based off of how much you run or pass, and maybe the results of games. But the thing that's been unique about this preparation, I alluded to it before, is that there's been some flux on their roster, right, as you have pointed out. And we preach all the time about let's just worry about us. Let's worry about our strengths, and let's make sure we continue to grow in our areas of growth, right, our weaknesses. And so it's been easier for us to emphasize that in this extended prep, right, through these practices that we've talked about before to make sure that we're just, hey, let's worry about us. So whatever we need to do necessarily to improve and feel like we're going to give ourselves the best chance to win the game. But, yeah, when you look at their back half, specifically personnel, there's been some different people, right, and they have. And I think – but when you look at teams who, some of the teams they play, well, yeah, they have a lot of passing stats if somebody drops back and throws the ball 65 times a game too, right? So I'm always careful to, to quickly judge, oh, yeah, they can't defend the pass, because I know this, those guys can rush the quarterback, right? And we just talked about making sure the importance of not giving up sacks, and if we give up too many of those opportunities, or we have too many of those where we get predictable, and it could be a long day for us. It could be a problem. So, yeah, sure, right? You want to be able to say, okay, yeah, you're giving up some passing yards, but you need to make sure that we're going to the game with balance for sure.
I have a question. Maybe this is overly simplistic or maybe kind of fan talk and has nothing to do with game preparation. Is there anything to do with Big 12 versus SEC, Kansas coming back into the bowl picture in the face of SEC teams? Does that get the players' attention, or does anybody? I mean, does that have any part of the equation?
Well, I think if you were to ask our guys, I know they'll be available in a little bit, I think they would be excited to play whoever was on the docket, so to speak. Certainly there's a lot of respect for that league and, top to bottom, right? Everyone across the country is going to talk about it. But I think our guys are excited about the opportunity to play anybody, anywhere, honestly, to play the 13th game is how I would answer that. But ask them, I think they would give you a real good, true answer.
I agree.
Well, a couple of things. That could be a really long answer, and so I'll try to be real quick. One, we had spring football, right? So you got to remember a year ago we never even had spring football with the players. And if you can imagine for a second, the situation that we came into, there wasn't really a true starting quarterback. And so there was 3 or 4 guys whose names keep coming up that they had started and played in college football games. And we didn't get to watch them throw a football in person and live until the very first day of fall camp. So that's a challenge, right? But not to make excuses about performance or lack thereof. But then certainly, as we've talked about, just players being around more and getting to understand our culture and how we do things and our standards, and how that they have started to hold each other to those standards. They have a better understanding of what we're trying to do. They've grown. Okay, I think a year ago, I don't know this factually, but somebody can check the stat. Someone told me we were one of the top youngest teams in college football a year ago. Right, and so there's some natural maturation that's going to occur there, right, from a year ago to now that's happened. So it stems to our players and their development. And as Coach B said before, they've bought into the some things that we're doing, which has promoted their development and it hasn't stymied their development, right? And so in everything that we do from the off season to how we practice, I would point to those things to see the growth. And obviously we've had some players really, their trajectory was really steep from where they were a year ago, and at a lot of positions, not to point one out, but I think all the positions, there's been a really steep trajectory of improvement in performance.
But Portland, could you give us a sense of what the attitude or spirit's been around the team, around the practices over the past few weeks? Has it had some lighter moments at good times and then start dialing in maybe late last week, or how'd that kind of flow?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started, we did more developmental practices, so a lot of guys that had played a lot of reps, they really weren't as involved in those practices, so it was really good for a lot of our younger guys. So I think we've tried to not wear it out. When you can't practice 15 or 16 times and everything that you do is geared towards this opponent, and guys will it'll get old and it'll get stale. So I think we've tried to keep things fresh. We've done a lot of work versus each other, offense versus defense, and so I think that's good. We've really shortened up our practices so that kind of getting them in and getting them out a lot quicker and more efficiently, or not more efficiently, but just quicker. Shortening some things up to keep guys fresh. So obviously, as we've come down the stretch here, we've dialed a lot more towards specifically to Arkansas. But and I think I don't feel like our guys are tired. I don't feel like they're wore out. I don't think I think we're fresh and we're excited about playing, and hopefully we'll go out there and play our best.
You said Devin Neal? He's been doing good. He's kind of been really nice. This has been a good extended break for him. Obviously, he had a decent amount of carries this fall. And so when you have players like that, and like Coach B was just saying, the guys who played significant snaps, and he mentioned to Kenny, it's good sometimes that we can kind of spoon feed the game plan and the reps back into him. But he's been looking good. Today was his fastest day since end of the season for sure.
Anything else for the coaches?
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
guys.
y'all. Rock Chalk.